When there's a shift, when your center of regard, your center of your consciousness shifts from you as an individual to what all beings have in common. Not just human beings, but all existence. As I said, from the most distant star to the empty space, to everybody in this room, to the chair that you're sitting on, to the air that you breathe. It's all just actually one underlying reality, by whatever we call that. And to really see this is to actually embrace life. It's in a certain sense to find that radical sense of yes to existence, to life on its own terms. Not I'll say yes when everything looks like my version of nirvana, then I'll say yes. When people stop killing each other and polluting and doing what I don't want them to do, then I'll say yes. No, it's yes to existence on its own terms. Yes to life exactly as it is. That doesn't mean you've got to like all of it or agree with all of it, but it means you see the underlying reality of all of it. There's a yes to it. Yes. Does that make sense? I don't know. I don't want to say that. In that yes, then we're not running from anything. There's nothing we're avoiding. In fact, when the center of our regard is not stuck within our own incarnation, that's the birth of love. Of a causeless sort of universal love. Then you become a redeeming presence in the world. You become a liberating presence in the world. Just imagine what that looks like. I remember the first time I heard this statement, or I read it. And you know, like when you realize something and then it's really nice when you find language that really puts it into a nice, beautiful, clear expression. And this whole part of realization that I'm talking about, when I read this phrase, I thought immediately, that's it. Whoever wrote that, that's it. And it actually came from the Christian Gospels. I think the Gospel of John. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's where it came from. For God so loved the world that He gave it His only begotten Son. Now, if you don't get too hung up in all the sort of theology about that and what that means or doesn't mean, for Christians, because, you can take that as, a personal savior thing or not. It either way will work. It doesn't really matter. But if you take that as something that's universal, it's actually a beautiful expression. For God so loved the world. Just imagine that. So loving the world that He gave it His only begotten Son. And I would also add, and His only begotten daughters. And guess who they are? You. Just imagine if at some moment you realize that something, even though this world is a wild place to be sometimes, that you so love the world that you gave yourself to it as an act of love. That's actually what you're doing here. Underneath the comings and goings of daily life and whether you like some moment or don't like some moment. But one of the things that makes life so difficult for so many of us human beings is because we've forgotten. Because to come into existence, to be born, is to have the experience of the deeper parts of our nature being veiled. But if you realize that you were here as an act of love, to be a redeeming presence in the world. That all the difficulty, all the pain that you might have in your life or might have ever experienced, that you were actually here to redeem it. That you actually came here for that. What if you came here for all the stuff that you're running away from? What if your actual existence was more to redeem all of that? In other words, to set it all free. And not just that, but everything else, by the way. In other words, to just be a redeeming presence in the world. I don't mean some big deal redeeming presence. I don't mean you're running around thinking you're the savior of mankind necessarily. I mean, because really life is meaningful in the small moments, isn't it? It's the small moments. Doesn't really count.